All right, what's up, everybody? Here we are on the live stream. Basically, we're just going to go over all the trade deadline trades, I should say, in the NBA, and kind of go through them trade by trade and kind of break down what the initial thoughts are on everything, and then go from there. So let's just start on the Luka Doncic trade, since that's the biggest one. If you're new, feel free to subscribe to the channel, all that good stuff. Um, so yeah, let's start with Luca. The Lakers pull off a move that sends Anthony Davis, Max Christie, a future second or a future first round pick, in order to get Luka Doncic. They also get Maxi Kleber and Markieff Morris, and then the Jazz are also in the deal by getting 2 seconds along with Jalen Hood Schifino. So the big draw here is obviously Luka Doncic going to the Los Angeles Lakers. The big thing here is that you kind of watch initially for the cap sheet whenever a trade's made, and the first big thing here for the Lakers is now they have this young star who is now going to move forward and kind of lead their franchise from here on out. His contract is fine, and they'll extend him. I would assume. I think they can start extension talks this summer. So they'll go into that and they can kind of just lock up Luka for the future. And that's what the whole Dallas holdup was hey, we're not going to, go into the summer and have to worry about this whole Luka Doncic extension thing. So when they do that and they make this deal, at least on Nico Harrison's side, it looks like something where they were a little bit scared to offer Luka any money. And there were issues obviously in Dallas, and I think during the finals run that they had last year, a lot of people were very critical of Luka, and it became something where I think a lot of people overemphasized um, the faults or the flaws that he may have as a player, and maybe overlooked the fact that, like, yes, he's a top five player in the league and he led a Dallas Maverick team to the NBA Finals, and ultimately it's just kind of like whatever. So Luka goes to the Lakers. What does that mean for the Lakers? I mean, the first thing that I like looking at is just the ability that Luka has as a passer. Um, Throw some good old highlights here. So the biggest thing is the ability to create, right? Like we initially go into a play here with Lively where lob threat, right? And we'll get into the Mark Williams stuff in a minute, but Luka provides a lot of ability for bigs, and so this will apply to Jackson Hayes. It will apply to um, the new player in Mark Williams. And the other thing is that they kind of play a different style now. The Lakers will. They're gonna go and be a little bit more Luka centric. They're gonna be a team that is gonna try to space out teams a lot more, and create opportunities from behind the arc for both Rui Hachimura, given if he does not get moved here in the next 45 minutes. Um, for Rui, and then for also Dorian Finney-Smith, who are two really really good, and I would say really above good shooters. But Luka has this ability to be able to create opportunities from 3 point land for other players, and also having two lob threats with Hayes and and Mark Williams. I think that's going to be a big thing. So that's huge. That's initially just kind of the offensive thing. Defensively, there's going to be some issues um, for the Lakers. Obviously, that's not Luka's strong suit. He's going to be kind of a weaker perimeter defender. But the biggest thing I think is just the fact that he comes in, he is the guy of the future, and he's going to provide kind of an interesting lineup for the Lakers when it comes to both him, Reeves, and LeBron being on the floor, which I think the Lakers will consider all things, and we'll definitely break that down in the future to see what are the Lakers going to try to do as far as their rotations go, because you can't start Mark Williams, Luka, LeBron, Reeves, uh, Rui Hachimura, and Dorian Finney-Smith. That's six guys, and so one of them's got to sit. I could debate that you could maybe have a lot of size on the court and just elect to keep Finney Smith and or Hachimura off, and you keep Reeves on. Um, but there's probably going to be Reeves, Luka, or LeBron on the court at all times to be able to create some offense. And while I think Luka's top tier, and then you kind of drop down to a tier to LeBron's level, just given the age, then there's another tier that you drop down to where it's Reeves. And I think all of those three levels are fine in a playoff setting where most of these guys are going to be playing like 35 to 38 minutes in a playoff series, even maybe even more. And so you have a lot of ability here now with Luka as your main guy to be able to make decisions like what you're seeing on the screen here. Just as being a guy who maybe a team blitzes, maybe a team just hedges, maybe a team switches. Like he's going to be able to attack most mismatches, and really, I think he's the best in the league at being able to make decisions out of simple actions that they may run. So it'll be interesting to see what JJ does to kind of get him the ball. LeBron's also going to be used as a screener. I mean, he has been doing that a little bit more this year. So it'll be interesting to see what the Lakers kind of do moving forward with Luka on their team, and then also the addition of Mark Williams as well. So that is the Luka Doncic trade. Winners, losers. I mean, you can't really say a whole lot about winners and losers when it comes to these type of deals when nobody's played. A whole season hasn't even gone by. Ultimately, the Lakers get who they want with Luka, and it does not hurt to get a top 5, maybe even a top 3 player in the league, and you make the fit work. LeBron is obviously going to be able to adapt as best as he can, and I know that there's a little bit of confliction with how LeBron plays and how Luka plays, but I don't think it's going to be too much of an issue, especially LeBron in this latter part of his career. I think he's willing to play a little bit more off ball. I know we've been saying that for years with LeBron is like, oh, hey, Kyrie's going to take over now. Oh, hey, look, in the Cleveland days. Oh, look, now Anthony Davis is going to be the guy. And Davis had been a little bit of the guy for a minute, but ultimately, like, if there's going to be anybody that makes LeBron kind of shift his the way he plays a little bit, I think it's going to be Luka. And I think LeBron can still do a great job of whether that being a guy who's coming up and setting screens, or if it's a guy who's just cutting off of Luka drives. And so I ultimately think this is a good move for the Lakers. I don't know what it means for their title hopes this year. I think they're very, very they're going to be a tough out wherever they land in the standings, and we can't even really speak on that until the playoff matchups are set. But they're going to be an intriguing team. And I think they kind of were an intriguing team before this deal. And I think that's just kind of like emphasized a little bit more now. Like they're definitely going to be an intriguing team, a tough out, whatever it may be. They're going to go into a series where regardless if they have home court advantage or not, like you're sitting at an even 0-0 series in game 1 and you're staring across the court and you got LeBron and Luka on the other side. Like you're not feeling as confident. So it'll be interesting to see what the team does in the playoffs. Breaking that down as far as the Lakers side, we'll go into the Dallas side now. So the Dallas Mavericks elect to trade away Luka Doncic. It's a crazy kind of move that is made, and I think everyone's initial thought was like Luka probably forced himself out, and it comes out that like no, that wasn't the case. And it's kind of crazy to think about that, Luka's gone and this championship run, or at least the finals run that they had last year, is kind of just forgotten about a little bit because it's like now we're moving with Kyrie and Anthony Davis as our guys. And we, according to Nico Harrison, believe that that's going to put us in a better position moving forward. So to recap on this trade, I mean, Dallas goes and gets Anthony Davis. They get Max Christie. They get a first-round pick in 2029 from the Lakers. Lakers give receive Luka, Maxi Kleber, Markieff Morris. Jazz go and get Jalen Hood-Schifino in 2 seconds. So my initial thought when I come to realize like, hey, Luka's gone, is okay, who is Anthony Davis? Anthony Davis is still a relatively elite rim protector, and I really think that Davis comes in and immediately helps the defense. I know that Lively has the injury. I know that Gafford is kind of been pretty all right ever since being acquired last trade deadline. But I do feel like Anthony Davis provides a lot of a lot of flexibility of what you can do defensively. I think you kind of put Gafford slash Lively in an area now where you say, okay, let's have Gafford be maybe a little bit of a roamer, or somebody that we like to try to keep closer to the rim, I should say, and that way we can negate any potential switches that happen in the playoffs at all to create any mismatches. And then with AD, it's kind of like, look, he can hold his own. If he needs to switch, he can be a guy who is going to be a roamer around the paint and stays close to the rim. But ultimately, like, Davis gives them so much ability here. I mean, here we get a play where Davis is playing good perimeter defense on Jaylen Brown. Like, that is the ability that Anthony Davis still has. I don't really like getting into the health conversation. I mean, it is an issue, but hey, if you're Dallas, you make this move. Ultimately, I think that, like, maybe somebody above Nico Harrison, maybe it's these new owners over at the in Dallas. Like, did they make a move, or did they elect to say, hey, like, we just don't think Luke is the guy? Okay, cool. You move forward, you get a guy in Anthony Davis that I think is still a dude who can go out and get 30 points in a playoff game. Yes, he is. Has he disappeared? Yes, he has definitely question marks. And I feel like most of these all stars that you see now are just very flawed, and there's not many. Really, there's none of them that have any issues where you're like, oh, there's no issues. So it is what it is there. But Anthony Davis, I still feel like still a rim protector. He is still a guy who's going to be consistently going to get 25, especially in this whole two-man game that he may run with both him and Kyrie. Like, that's going to be great, and I feel like it's going to turn into something where Davis and Kyrie can create problems in a playoff series. But the issue now is kind of like just getting into the playoffs. Like, you have to go into the playoffs, and or I guess go throughout the rest of the season. As if it's the playoffs, because like, they're still fighting in that playing spot, and you got to be a little bit better if you're the Mavericks to position yourself, because I don't think anybody wants to play Oklahoma City in the first round, especially if you're Dallas. And you got to be able to move up the rankings a little bit more. Max Christie, we already got some film here from the Mavericks game. But look, he's a perimeter player who's kind of developed his skills a little bit more. Like, Christie is not somebody who's gonna, like, be earth shattering for this team. He is shooting 37% from three, which is great. That's a good shooter that they add, and then LA has kind of developed him a little bit more into a perimeter defender. Here we have him guarding Tyler Hero, disrupts an inbound pass, like, doesn't turn it into anything for the Lakers, but, like, he's just kind of a little bit of a disruptor. And I think that is valuable for the Dallas Mavericks to have. Is you'll never turn down a guy who's going to be at the very least disruptive on defense, and a guy who's able to at least convert at a good enough rate from behind the three, and he's kind of developed that into that for the Lakers. And so Dallas acquires him on a pretty team friendly deal. And they'll eventually have to extend him. But quick look at the Mavericks cap sheet here. They get Christie for the next few years on a again, team friendly deal. Like, he's not even making $10 million, and I think you're totally cool with that as a franchise. And then you have the Anthony Davis contract going through the end of 2027. The only issue, like, kind of thing that I think of for Dallas moving forward here, contract wise for the team, is I don't know, like, Kyrie has totally flipped this, like, somewhat flipped the narrative of, hey, he's kind of a problem, he's kind of a brat, like, he doesn't want to be part of the Celtics, he doesn't want to be part of the Nets, there's a lot of the stuff during 2020 that happened with him, and COVID and everything, and so to me, he flipped that after going to Dallas. And look, winning ultimately can shut up a lot of people, and them going to the finals was a big thing. Him being a big part of their finals run was a big thing. And so now I feel like people have kind of forgotten that Kyrie was a little bit of a trouble child before getting to Dallas. And does this move Like, look, any player is going to be upset if you take one of the best players in the league and you take him off the team, and it seems kind of like a big sudden move. I would not be surprised if Kyrie elects to maybe force the hand of Dallas to potentially move him, because he is going into an off season now where he has to make the decision if he's opting in to the player option that he has. And so, is there a team out there that would be interested in Kyrie? Maybe. Does Kyrie even want to leave? Maybe. So it's just kind of something to monitor. I don't think the idea that Anthony Davis and Kyrie being a huge big pairing for the few years that Nico Harrison believes they're gonna be. I don't know if that's like really a great thing for this team. And so we'll see, and we'll see what the end of the season looks like for Dallas. I think they did. I think they could have gotten more. In fact, I know they could have gotten more. But I ultimately am like, hey, look, this move probably came from above Nico Harrison, and I think that's an actual like thing that very well could have happened. Like, they don't, if people in upper management don't want Luka, they don't want Luka, and he's gone, and you can do whatever you can do to get to, acquire guys back. Yes, more picks would have been great, but at this point, it's kind of like it is what it is, and you can only go off of so much. So that is the Dallas Mavericks Luka Doncic trade that sends him to the Los Angeles Lakers. It'll be very interesting. Like I mentioned before, we'll probably do some videos on like all these trades. So Jimmy Butler to the Warriors. Obviously the Lakers getting not only just Luka Doncic but also getting Mark Williams. It'll be a fun little breakdown to see how they play and what we can kind of project come playoff time, and go from there. Let's really quickly talk about the Sacramento Kings now acquiring Zach LaVine and trading away De'Aaron Fox to the San Antonio Spurs. So let's start from the Spurs angle. The full trade is De'Aaron Fox goes to San Antonio Spurs. They also get Jordan McLaughlin. The Sacramento Kings get Zach LaVine, Sidi Sissoko. They get a top 14 pick that's protected this year in the 2025 draft. So a first round pick there. They get a 2027 first rounder, a 2031 first rounder, and then 3 seconds. And then the Bulls get Zach Collins, Trey Jones, Kevin Huerter, and then their own pick that they got back from San Antonio for this upcoming draft in 2025. So the big move here is for the Spurs. De'Aaron Fox, I think is a fine player. I'm not gonna be I'm gonna be totally transparent. I think he's improved his defensive ability since coming into the league and everything. But the biggest issue for the Kings is that he is a guy, or excuse me, not the Kings, but for the Spurs is that I still question a little bit of his shot selection and his efficiency on offense. I definitely am fully in on hey man, this guy can distribute a little bit. He plays fast. That's his big draws. But ultimately he's never been a super efficient player. And while I think he fits the timeline of hey, we have Victor Wembanyama and we want to make plays kind of going into the future, maybe we can acquire somebody else to pair along these two. I don't know if Fox ever jumped out to me as dude, he totally fits in San Antonio. Totally fits. Yes, he's a dude who can be able to create a lot on his own. I just question the offensive efficiency with him, and I still relatively have issues on the defensive end. He's a guy that he's going to be guarding. They don't try to hide Fox at all because he's not terrible. He's just not great as a defender. So they're never going to put Fox on a big man and really try to hide him on the defensive end. They put him on guards and he'll do what he does. I worry that it gets to a point where the production of, well, yes, hey, 25 points, 5 and 6, that's good. I just wonder where I just still have questions about it. I just kind of don't feel great about the Fox fit. and we'll see. We'll definitely see, because right now I look at De'Aaron Fox and I'm like, okay, what has been his like ceiling as a player? Well, probably that 25 5-5 guy, which is great. But still question marks. Let's move over to the Kings. I am really surprised that the Kings were able to get so many picks for Fox. Um, like for them to be able to potentially get like 3 first rounders, which the top 14 pick from Charlotte, like that's not going to convey. Like Charlotte's going to be a top 5-ish team in the draft, and so that's not going to convey. And then, but to get 2 first, like that's not terrible for them. And they also still get a guy who just kind of going off the box score numbers. When you look at Levine, you're like, hey, like Levine doesn't Levine kind of like average 25 and 5 and like on a good year this season for the Bulls, 24 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists. He's an even worse defender than Fox. So that kind of like doesn't help them on that end, but it does give them like ability and like 3 really good guys that, or I should really say four really good guys for the Kings with Sabonis, Levine himself, DeMar DeRozan, and Malik Monk. It gives them a lot of, offensive ability. The defensive end is still kind of a question mark. But I'm gonna love watching the Kings to see how they kind of fit everything in, and that goes with Fox as well. As for the Bulls, getting their own pick back, awesome, cool. And they're kind of a confused franchise. I feel like right now, like, do we tank? Like, do we just kind of like accept the fact that we're not good, or do we try to fight for this playing spot? Um, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. I think it really helps some of their guards that they have. They have Kobe White, they have Josh Giddey, and then they have Ayo Dosunmu. And so clearing up Levine's shots and everything, getting those out of the way and allowing some of those young guys to maybe potentially develop into more, I think that's a good thing for them moving forward. We are, we're doing this live stream and everything. We got about 30 minutes. I don't anticipate that Vucevic is going to get traded. I just don't know what team really wants him, because you really sacrifice rim protection with him. He's not a good defender. And while the offensive upside is there, like he is kind of shooting the ball lights out this year. And is there a regression a little bit more to the mean there? So yeah, Vucevic goes to is not, in my personal opinion, I don't think Vucevic is going to go to a team that is like, a playoff team. Could be wrong. We got 30 minutes. But historically, like once we're within like 20 minutes of the trade deadline, like there isn't really like a huge deal that's made. Um, so yeah, Kings, De'Aaron Fox will be interesting to watch what they do. And then also the Kings getting, Spurs getting Fox, Kings getting Levine, Bulls kind of doing what they're doing. Okay. So let's move on to some other big trades. Let's see. Caleb Martin, Quentin Grimes. A little confusing. I think a lot of Dallas fans really like Grimes. I don't really have a whole lot to say on this other than like I still kind of don't understand the vision for Dallas exactly, but hey, whatever. We'll skip a couple of these trades. Some of these bigger, some of these other ones that are kind of smaller. Initially, I thought the Daniel Tice trade for Oklahoma City. Initially, I thought it was going to be like, oh, maybe Chet's out longer than we thought, because they've kind of just been surviving off of Hartenstein and then Carlson, and I don't really think that's sustainable come playoff time. So I was worried that this Tice move was like, oh shoot, we don't think Chet's going to be back until like late March or something like that, but he is coming back for this team, and they said that he'll be playing on Friday, tomorrow. So that's huge news for the Thunder. And given all these trades, we can talk about all these trades and say, hey, these are, is this team a title contender? Is this team, what it is? I ultimately think that the moves that you make at trade deadlines, they don't lead you to a championship for the most part. Like I honestly like can't even for the playoffs ultimately. So, um, couple comments here. Sacktown is a lost cause right now. Too old to tank. Not enough talent to compete. Chicago needs to send like 5 heads for a young star to start a new build. You know that's true. Like Chicago could move some of their young guys. I think it's always good to stack up on young pieces and build through the draft and build through these team friendly deals and then kind of go from there. So it's very true there. Sacktown, look, I mean they're gonna be in the plan. It looks like, based on just like how their schedule goes, where the Lakers and other teams like the Mavericks and Timberwolves are at. I usually like going on to Basketball Reference and look to see what the playoff probabilities are for them. Um, but yeah, I think Sacramento, like, they're probably going to be 8, 9, or 10. Like that's just kind of the where they're going to be at. So now you're looking at, okay, what's our matchup in the play-in, and then can we compete with, whoever that is. Like, let's just say the Timberwolves or the Clippers are the 7 seed, and the Kings work their way up to 8. So you're playing to play the Grizzlies more than likely. Like I think the Grizzlies will probably be 2, or Houston, whatever. Um, I think that's better than having to go on the road and play Oklahoma City. And so that will be really interesting to see what happens with Sacramento. They could still potentially, do fun stuff offensively, but yeah, like it's a tough spot to be in the play-in, like because you have to ultimately decide, hey, do I want to be out and just try to get young players, or do I want to, go do something a little bit, um, more aggressive and try to make a playoff run. And I think you're absolutely right that Sacramento is in a weird position, and it's a position that you want to try to get out of for the most part. Speaking about the Kings, they also acquire Jonas Valanciunas. I'm not, they use City Sissoko like to move. I like Valanciunas hasn't been good for a minute now, and I don't anticipate like he's going to come in and be like a huge world beater for this team. Very poor in some of the tracking data metrics that um, like he's like one of the worst defenders in the league. So I'm not gonna get too excited for Sacramento there. Um, okay, uh, we are about 20 minutes ish away from the deadline, but we're gonna kind of just continually go through these trades. Um, look, let's talk about the Middleton deal for Milwaukee now. So the Chris Middleton kind of saga that's happened recently, really after their finals run, when they won back a few years back. It The Middleton thing has just been so weird because he's just been injured, and that has really caused issues for this Bucks team because when you're committing so much money to not only just Damian and Giannis, but you're also kind of committing money over to other guys like Bobby Portis and Brooke Lopez. Let me go pull up the Bucks cap sheet here. Um, so Levine was in, or not Levine. Middleton was in such a weird spot because he just wasn't available. And when he would play, it was like, oh man, this guy is Middleton done. Like I've seen people say, like on the socials, like, is Middleton like just consider retirement at this point rather than to go play for Washington? And I don't think that's like super out there. I mean, it is kind of crazy, but like what is Middleton going to do with the rest of his career? Um, so the trade itself is Kyle Kuzma, Patrick Baldwin Jr., Jericho Sims, and second round draft compensation. The Wizards get AJ Johnson, who the Bucks were like super high on draft day, which is kind of random that they would give him up. But then they give Chris Middleton to the Wizards as well, along with a 2028 pick swap. And then the Knicks get DeLon Wright cash considerations. Kind of like the move for the Knicks, like just shortly, because they're not like a huge deal here. The Knicks getting DeLon Wright, like I think he's solid. I think he's a good defensive player. Whether he plays a whole lot in New York, whatever, but like at least you're adding a guy who like is a good defender in the league, and ultimately it is what it is. You get something out of it, right? And you don't have to. What do you give up? You give Jericho Sims, who really wasn't playing a whole lot, and you're waiting on Mitchell Robinson to come back anyway. Okay, so the Wizards, I'm interested like with what they were kind of thinking on this because Washington trades Kuzma, and we'll take a look at the Wizards cap sheet here. Kuzma's not like Kuzma's not great, and it's kind of random that the Bucks decided like we are so ready to get off the Middleton deal that we want to get Kuzma, and we think Kuzma's probably maybe he wasn't the best thing you can get from Middleton, or at least what the market was demanding for someone like Middleton, or not demanding, but wanting for Middleton. But you get Kuzma, young player. I mean, I guess he's not even young anymore. He's 29. But Kuzma, who's kind of just fallen off in Washington, like defense is still terrible. The offensive efficiency is not good, right? Like he's not a guy who I think excels offensively or defensively. The 3-point shooting is still relatively like just like not great, not good. He has always been a good rebounder, and I think that's one thing that you like to get if you're Milwaukee. But like, bro, he is a turnover machine, as well, and so I just don't get like. I almost feel like if you're Milwaukee, would it have been better to just keep Middleton? Because like Kuzma's rough, and he'll have some fun moments, but he's rough, and I don't know. So Middleton, I would assume. I'm kind of bouncing back and forth between Milwaukee and Washington right now. I'm gonna go back to Washington really quick. Middleton to me doesn't seem like a guy who is gonna go and say, "Hey, I'm gonna just opt into my contract and go for just keep my money." I could see him basically like turning it down and just wanting to get back to a playoff team because like he suffered before Milwaukee, like he was in Detroit in some dark days. I don't know, so that opens up kind of interesting things here. Washington, I assume, didn't want to pay Kuzma or not want to pay Kuzma. I think they were just kind of done with Kuzma because his contract isn't terrible. Like it's 23, 21, 19 for the next few years. And so it's one of these front-loaded contracts that decreases annually. And so it's not like, I don't know. It's just such a weird deal. And a deal that I don't feel like either team gets like a huge boost. Like, hey, Milwaukee now, man, like they get a good defensive player. You can help on offense a little bit, allow Giannis and Damian to have a lot of the offensive load, and then just be a dog on defense. Like, that's not necessarily the Kuzma. Maybe he'll buy in. He buys in a little bit, and maybe. But right now, I don't really see the vision of them getting better. I think at best, Milwaukee stays the same, and they get a contract that's a little bit more friendly, and they avoid having to pay Middleton. Um, but we'll see. I think it's just a kind of an interesting deal that both teams made. Um, Baldwin ends up being moved again from Milwaukee. We'll get into that a little bit. Um, and then yeah, so just kind of a weird one for me personally. Like it doesn't do anything drastic, and you could make the argument it makes Milwaukee worse. You could make that argument, and yeah, so interesting. Really quickly before we move off of this trade, Giannis is under contract for the next few years, and I feel like I think everyone's kind of targeting now Giannis as potentially being that guy who's going to force his way out. We heard a lot about Fox recently. That was relatively new. We heard a lot about Jimmy Butler, but I think Giannis is now the focus of a lot of teams that are like, hey man, they got rid of the guy you want to chip with. Things haven't been great these last couple seasons without your guys, Drew Holiday and Middleton. Does a team like, I think Miami's talked about Giannis before. They definitely have a lot of young players. Does a team like Memphis say like, hey, let's push some of our younger guys in there and let's try to make a move? I don't know what the move is exactly, but I definitely feel like especially going into next year where it's technically the last year of Damian's contract, right? Like he can opt out. I don't think he will, but when you look at the 54 and 58 million he's going to be making next season and the year after, like does Giannis sit back and say like, "Yo, do I want to continue to be a part of this team?" And if things flame out this year, which Doc Rivers, man, like might happen, um, if that does kind of happen, then what do we do moving forward with Giannis? Like, because I think the floodgates could open. The rumors are going to flood open because the NBA media loves to jump on this stuff. Also, Giannis made that weird comment the other day about like he's glad that Luka went to the Lakers because of the market, and then he's glad he would want like Jokic in New York, like in his dream scenario, and because he wants all the Europeans in the big cities, and then I'm sure Milwaukee fans were like, wait, hold up, all the Europeans, you're European, dude, like why are you saying that? So I wouldn't be surprised if Giannis, some rumors of Giannis like wanting to get out of there are, you know, they come up during this summer. So that is the Bucks deal and the Wizards. Kuzma going to the Bucks. Middleton shipped out to Washington. All right. About 10 minutes from trade deadline, I can't imagine things are going to happen. I mean, there are some smaller moves that are being made. The Clippers made a move. The Hawks and Rockets, and then like Detroit is getting Dennis Schroeder. We're gonna focus on the bigger stuff. Let's really quickly talk about the Pelicans today sending out, or I should say yesterday, Pelicans sending out Brandon Ingram and acquiring Bruce Brown and Kelly Olynyk. So let's really quickly go over that one. So for the Pelicans, like their season's been so weird this year. Like they just like they've had injuries. They bring in DeJounte Murray, and you're kind of like, okay, this is a weird fit. He has injuries issues, and then he gets injured again, and he's done for the season. The whole Zion saga is going on right now, and it's just kind of a mess. Um, Meanwhile, in Toronto, it's like you're kind of building some fun stuff in Toronto, and you have some young players that are kind of interesting, and but you're just not talented enough right now to win, especially in the Eastern Conference, which is kind of random for them. Oh shoot, there we go. So this trade now allows New Orleans to basically say like, hey, we weren't crazy about Ingram, and like he wasn't really in our plans long term anyway, so they move off of him. Um, I'm interested with who they traded for though, and so we're actually going to start with Toronto first since they have the best player in the deal, but New Orleans is really interesting too. So Ingram comes in, he's immediately a free agent this offseason, and so you're going to pay him, right? You don't make this move unless you're going to pay Ingram. And look, Toronto, like they're not a free agent destination, so getting a guy like Ingram and allowing him to like still pay him his money and keep him happy and all that. That is kind of the motivation for Toronto. Um, on paper, you look at quickly RJ, who's kind of been better since he left New York, Pirtle, and Scotty Barnes. Like that's not terrible, especially in the East. Um, I think their issue is just like there's some inconsistencies on offense and defense for them, and they're just all so young still. Um, so getting a guy like Ingram who can create a little bit more of stability on offense, he's still a good offensive player. Um, he is, how do I say it? He's kind of one of these older school players that like works through and operates out of the mid range a lot, but he's capable of still shooting threes. He's capable of doing a lot. He's I think actually improved a little bit as a passer in his career. Um, but he's still turning over the ball a lot. Uh, I like Ingram. I think the Raptors are building something kind of interesting. The one thing that kind of changes, I think, it really changes my mind is if Toronto elects to like say, hey, let's just kind of like maybe we don't even play Ingram this season because like Ingram hasn't even played for a long time with his ankle issue. Maybe we elect to kind of just hold him out and we go the tanking route the last few months here. Um, what like what happens if they go land a top pick? What happens if they go land Cooper Flag, or Dylan Harper, or Ace Bailey, one of these, some of these top prospects in the draft? What happens then? I think what happens then is like this Toronto team actually becomes really interesting going into next year. Um, and so like an interesting move by Toronto and something that I think is ultimately good for them. And now we'll shift over to New Orleans because New Orleans is so interesting to me that they made a move for Bruce Brown. Like he's a free agent this year, much like Ingram. He's a free agent this year, this upcoming summer. And so why do you move him? Or why do you make a move for him? Typically, you make a move for a guy like that because you're going to sign him. Now, I know in like the new CBA and everything, like the whole sign and trades have become a little bit more frequent. Um, so for me, I'm like, is the move then to go extend Bruce Brown and Kelly Olynyk still has another year under his contract as well? Is the move to go and like potentially move these guys on maybe team friendly deals and then you move them again? Like, I think Bruce Brown and Kelly Olynyk, like those are two names that if you're a playoff team, you're like, oh, if we could get those guys like for cheap. Brown's a little bit more expensive, but like Olynyk is only making 12 and 13 over the next couple of years. If we could acquire those guys, like hey, like that's actually not like that, those are value. That's value. And so for New Orleans, like the team that's like really not great right now, for them to be the ones that acquire both of those guys, it's kind of interesting to me. Like, do they want to make another move? And again, we're officially like kind of done with the trade deadline right now, as it's up in about 10 minutes. My thing is like, does New Orleans now shift their ideas to okay, let's move toward the future and maybe move these guys in the summer? Could be an option. Could be a really interesting option there. So we'll see what happens. Let me see here with this here. Yeah, I mean that's pretty much all I wanted to touch on with this trade. Like, Ingram's still good. He's still a player that's capable of going and scoring like 23 to 25 a night. So you're happy about that. But it's just I don't think the story is done yet with the Pelicans or the Raptors here. So we will see. They land a top pick, man. Like Toronto's really fun next year, man. Like really quickly to touch on Toronto again. So we talked about their five guys who are really solid. Grady Dick, pretty cool. Ochai's been solid for them. Jamal Shed has been a really good like older rookie for them this year. And I know a lot of people in Toronto are kind of like conflicted with Chris Boucher, but ultimately like he's, you know, maybe a guy that another team values a little bit. So very interesting. And a lot of team deals that aren't like they're not paying a guy like a stupid amount of money. Maybe they do that with Ingram, but they don't have like a terrible contract. Maybe the Quickly deal because he's been injured and he's young and maybe that's a little rich. But there's not a guy like that on their roster that I'm like, man, like he should not be being paid that much in respect to like what the cap is and everything. So all right, so let's shift our focus back over to the Lakers. They made another deal last night. That was the Mark Williams trade, where they go and pick him up out of Charlotte, and then they trade out Dalton Knecht, Cam Reddish, an unprotected 2031 pick. Super interesting. And then a 2030 pick swap. So very interesting move by the Lakers. Let's start with Mark Williams because he's the better player of the trade here. So Mark is a guy who has had injury issues, but when he has played, he's been pretty good. I think when they acquired Luka and they've the media's come out and talk about like, hey, Luka really wanted to get a guy who was, a vertical threat at the rim and a lob threat, all that stuff, pick and roll. We know the offensive side of stuff. The defensive end is a little bit more questionable with Mark Williams. He's had moments where he's looked good. He's had moments where really this year he hasn't. And maybe that's just in count of like, hey, like Charlotte's bad. And they don't really have like other perimeter defenders out there that you're feeling comfortable with. That being said, um, it was interesting for me to hear that like I think the Lakers valued getting a lob pick and roll threat for Luka, LeBron, and Reeves more than they valued getting a rim protector, and I think that's what this trade is showing. Um, and we just got kind of a big trade over with Memphis. They're sending Mark Smart away to Washington, so we'll talk about that one a little later. But for Mark Williams, it's huge. It's a huge get for the Lakers because he's better than Hayes, and I think he kind of plays a role for them where like he's gonna be a guy who I don't know how do I say it, like Luca and the team is operating out of Luca, LeBron, and then the third option is going to be Reeves. And Williams is a guy who's going to work through a lot of like just dump off passes. We'll go back to the old highlight machine here. But Mark Williams is a guy he's not a guy who's going to like you can throw him the ball like AD and he's going to go draw fouls in the post. He's more of a guy who's going to go and get shots like you're going to see right here. He's a guy who's going to score a lot of shots just from like dunks, just from dump offs, right? Like it's not going to be anything too wild with Mark Williams where they're creating offensive possessions for him to post up. Lob threats. That's what we're seeing. Lob threat, lob threat, lob threat, like everybody's been yelling at us about. Can he stay healthy? We'll see. It seems like the Lakers are encouraged that he could be. And, otherwise you don't really give up a pick in 5 years or 6 years that's unprotected. Because who knows in 6 years, man? Like in 6 years, like we don't even know. We thought like wasn't it like that time that like I don't know if that was the time that like Durant officially left Golden State, but it was like, well, we're gonna have KD and Curry and Draymond forever. Things can change. Things can absolutely change, and so it's risky to give an unprotected pick because best case scenario for the Lakers, Mark Williams becomes a guy who is okay. He's that guy who we paired up with Luka. He's awesome. He's great. We're super pumped for him. And, I would assume his line with the Lakers moving forward is probably a guy who's able to get at least, 12 to 14 a night with 10 rebounds. Like, that is Mark Williams. So I think they'd be ecstatic if that was happening and his health is good. The other thing that on the other end, I should say, is let's say his injury issues kind of flare up again and he has issues. That 2031 pick for the Lakers now becomes really crazy because it's like, in 2031 in the summer, we're like, oh, hey, Charlotte somehow is the Lakers pick. And the Lakers, let's say, were just kind of like a middling team that year. But they give up a first rounder, and I don't know. Like, a little bit risky, a little rich for the Lakers as they ultimately decide to go get their big of the future. And the other thing with the Lakers, really quickly with their cap sheet, Mark's not expensive. And let's say things do go south, like you don't have to guarantee anything in a few years. So it makes that, again, 2031 unprotected pick kind of weird, but hey, if things go south, like he's not getting paid a stupid amount of money, he's fine. Let's transition over to the Hornets on this. I'm kind of don't really know. I Here's the thing with the Hornets. I feel like them electing to say, hey, like we don't really like feel comfortable like moving forward with Mark Williams, so we're gonna get Dalton Connect, and the 31 pick is like very interesting. Yes, that's cool. Reddish is kind of just thrown in there. I feel like, as he's been everywhere recently, and so Mark for Connect is kind of the move. I know there's the pick involved, but in the short term, that's the move. And I think it's very questionable for Charlotte because the reports have been that they were pretty high on Connect coming out of Tennessee. I don't understand why you just don't pick him then. Like, why would you pass on um, Dalton Connect? I understand the lure, the attraction of getting an unprotected pick. Why would you trade Connect or for Connect when you couldn't have, when you could have just drafted him? So super weird there. I don't understand that at all. Um, got a couple other moves here. But yeah, super random, very weird for Charlotte. Moving forward with their cap sheet, like look, it's the Lamelo show. The whole Miles or yeah, the Miles Bridges thing is there. We'll talk about the Nurkic deal as he just got acquired there recently. And then Grant Williams. Like for Charlotte, I'm kind of just like, all right, well, it just seems like a move to make a move. You know what I mean? Like I don't think I think the getting back a young player, a young rookie, and an unprotected pick, like I think that's fair deal. But when you put it in the context of like it's Dalton Connect, I don't know. Like where does he fit in? Like he's not a guard of your future, right? Because that's Brandon Miller. Like you just acquired Josh Green. You have Trey Mann, who's had a pretty okay season. Like I don't know where he fits in exactly. And the reason why I wasn't really high on Connect was the fact that he's a lot older. So his peak basketball happened last year at Tennessee because he was a JUCO kid, and then he transfers to Tennessee, an older player, and he goes off, and now the whole NBA is all over him. So just interesting for me for the it seems like Charlotte is rich. I will say this, we've talked about teams making moves and everything. It's funny to me how some franchises will feed off of lower franchises or lesser franchises just making dumb decisions. And that's absolutely why the Lakers made the move for Luka, and that's absolutely why they make the move for Mark Williams. Oh, you're gonna give up Mark Williams, and all we got to get rid of is like streaky shooter Dalton Connect, who's a little old. Wow, yeah, we'll do that. Put aside the injury questions for Mark Williams. Maybe even put aside the rim protection. Like we're just getting value. And why is that? It's because Charlotte's making a move that they're basically saying, hey, like we don't believe in Mark Williams. We believe in Connect more. Um, so there's going to be plenty of things that we see. We see it every deadline. We see it every offseason. Just a team making a move where we're like, what? Dallas traded away Luka and they didn't even get like a boatload of picks. Like, cool, they got AD, but like, man. So that's the trade. The Lakers feast off of a little bit of a questionable move for the Hornets and move forward there. Um, okay, Jimmy Butler goes to the Golden State Warriors in a 14 blockbuster according to ESPN. Let's break this one down. So the trade is Golden State gets Jimmy Butler, Miami Heat get PJ Tucker, who's been moved again, Andrew Wiggins, Kyle Anderson, a protected first round pick. The Pistons get Lindy Waters, Josh Richardson, and the Jazz get Dennis Schroeder. Um, Things have been kind of altered post this, but this is kind of like the initial trade that happened. But the main pieces are obviously Wiggins going to Miami with Kyle Anderson, and then Jimmy Butler going to the Golden State Warriors. So let's start with the best player in the trade. It is Butler, obviously. Um, I think the narrative around Butler has been so interesting because when he was in Minnesota, he left, and there was a big old deal about him leaving. He goes to Philadelphia. There's a big old deal with him leaving. He goes to Miami. But then what does he do at Miami? Well, he leads them to two finals appearances. And I think if you're the Heat, you're totally ecstatic about that. And then this season slash last season kind of happens. Injuries. Hey, if I was healthy, we would have beat the Celtics. We would have been fine. Pat Riley's like, dude, shut up, man. Nobody cares what you're saying, man. Like, why are we talking in hypotheticals? Um, and then this whole fallout with him wanting to be extended, but the Heat not wanting to pay him. Which, hey, cool. If that's your motivation is the Heat, there's no problem with that. The Butler deal is a lot of money. The Warriors having to pay him now is like a big deal. Um, but Butler was a dude, and I know it was a couple years ago, and he's just getting older. He's not getting any better. Butler has made teams better. He took Philadelphia to the farthest that they've ever gotten in the playoffs. He took Minnesota, who was just very bad under Cat and Wiggins at the time, and he made them a team that at least was in the playoffs. And then he goes down to Miami, and we already talked about him getting them to two championships. Like, yes, they had Bam. Yes, they have Hero. Like, Jimmy's the leader of that bus. And so he has some things, and then it kind of goes sour. Basketball on the court wise for Golden State. I Man, like it's just a questionable fit. Like, you know, same with like not on the level, but it's kind of in the realm of like, hey, Luka and LeBron, they're kind of like a weird fit, but they're two smart players. They'll figure it out. I do feel that way a little bit about the Golden State trade. Draymond's smart, Kerr's smart, Curry's smart. Like those guys are smart. They're a team that operates in a way that, they're going to figure it out. But what is the end result of figuring it out? I don't know. Like I think I saw online that somebody said like it increases their chances of making the playoffs, the Golden State Warriors, but it does not increase their championship hopes. So that's the kind of only thing there. And as far as the contract situation goes, it's like you're paying Draymond, you're paying Steph, you're paying Jimmy, and you're forced to do it. Like teams that are paying a whole boatload of money for guys, their trade options are limited. That's why you didn't see Kevin Durant moved as the trade deadline has officially passed. Durant wasn't moved because of the money. It's not because of other things. Like it's just the fact that he's making so much money. And even on a bigger note, like Beal was not moved because of the money. Like you have to match up salaries, and you like nobody can do that with Beal. Nobody wants that contract, and so, when you're forced into a corner like you were with Golden State and having a lot of money, like Butler's fine. In fact, like unless Kevin Durant said like, "Hey, I'm fine with going back to Golden State," which we know he wasn't. I think Butler's the fine prize to I think still make the team better, but there's still a lot of holes that they have to figure out, and I don't know. I don't know. It just to me it's like they can't even really go into the offseason with money. So like the team that they have is like the team that they have here for them going forward, and we've just learned that that's not enough. Like you have a good foundation with Steph and Jimmy and Draymond. The issue is they are all super old, and Kuminga has not made that jump yet, and so it's just I don't know. Makes Golden State better, not better enough to be notable. But they'll be a team that we definitely kind of watch moving forward. To maybe we'll do a video breakdown on them because Jimmy's fun, Warriors are fun, but it's nothing crazy. Miami. So PJ Tucker's out. He's gone. They get Kyle Anderson, Andrew Wiggins, and a protected first round pick. Um, I'm interested with Miami because they got some guys. Like just a quick look at Miami's roster now. Let's really quickly take a look at them. Um, I mentioned Giannis earlier, and obviously we'll cut these videos up trade by trade, but my personal thought is that Giannis is going to come available at some point. These trades where they've gotten rid of some guys and they haven't really brought in the talent that I think he wants to have around him, or at least just a winning formula of talent. Um, I think that could force Giannis to be in a situation where he's kind of like, okay, I want out. And you're Miami, and you have Andrew Wiggins, his contract, along with Terry Rozier's contract, and maybe even Tyler Hero's contract, maybe. But like, you have the assets to go get a guy. Kel Ware has been pretty solid for the Heat. You have Jaime Jaquez still. You have Jovic. Pell Larson has not been bad for Miami. And so you have some young players that you can move forward with. If you need to move Anderson, cool, you can move Kyle Anderson. Um, you don't necessarily have the draft capital until 29 through 2031. Um, but you have ability to maybe make a lucrative offer to a team because of these young players. In the meantime, this is fully offensively the Tyler Hero show in Miami. Does that make them better? I mean, they're fine right now, standings wise. So for me, I'm kind of like, okay, so Miami's like at 6 right now, or they're not at 6. Miami's at like, no, yeah, they are the 6th seed. Miami's the 6th seed right now, and does this? I mean, I don't. While Detroit is like on their way up, I don't know if they're good enough to get past Miami, even though they're very close record wise. Um, so that's interesting. They're a game. Detroit's a game behind Miami. I think Miami probably finds themselves in the play-in. It'll be interesting to see what happens, because every game matters over there in the East when it comes to the play-in because everyone's so close to each other. Um, so with Miami moving forward now, it's like you have Hero, you have Bam. Is there a complementary piece out there that you want, that you covet? Because you can package up Wiggins again, along with Rozier, along with potentially Duncan Robinson's money, Kyle Anderson. Like, there's a move that Miami's going to make in the future, and this is kind of just setting the plate, setting it up for that. So we'll see what Miami does. I think it was a good move for them. They get a pick in the future, cool. You get Wiggins. In the meantime, it's like, is average Wiggins worse than like bad Butler, or like Butler when he's not motivated to play? I think they're relatively one and the same. So yeah, that's the big thing there. Um, yeah, that's it for Jimmy. Jimmy's a warrior. Wiggins is a member of the Heat, and we'll see what happens moving forward on that one. Um, I don't think there's been a couple more trades here that have popped up. Probably just refresh for a good old ESPN here. We'll be able to go over some of these new trades, but the most recent one was that Jimmy Butler one. That was kind of big. Let's go over the next ones. Heat give over PJ Tucker to the Raptors. They get Davion Mitchell. Hey, he seems like the absolute definition of a Miami Heat player, whatever. Hornets, like I should say the Suns make a salary cap move by saying, hey, we want to get under the apron, and so we're gonna trade Nurkic and a pick away to get Cody Martin. It's not a move it's not a winning move. It's not a move that says, hey, like we're trying to win a championship this year and we're adding depth and all that stuff. Like the Phoenix Suns are just they're such in a hole, and we had like there was a lot of hope for them at the beginning of the year. But now it's just like, man, you don't know what to do with them anymore. So here's a big deal. The move is between the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Atlanta Hawks. So let me pull it up here. So the Hawks go in and they move forward and they say, okay, we've kind of had this like love-hate relationship with DeAndre Hunter, and now we're officially cool with moving him. So Hunter moves and he goes to Cleveland. Uh, Hunter's been fine this year. Like he's averaged 19 points. He's not a guy who's gonna like move the ball like ever. Like he's just kind of been that way. The 3-point shooting has improved at least this year, so you really like seeing that. And if you're Cleveland, you're like, okay, we like DeAndre Hunter because he's gonna bring some athleticism to the team, a little bit more athleticism than what Karis LeVert had. The only issue, let's start with Cleveland. They acquire DeAndre Hunter. His defense has never quite been what you've wanted it. Like coming out of the draft and coming out of Virginia, he was like touted as like this defensive player who's got great size. He's 6'7", super long. Like he's an athlete. Like, maybe he can develop into somebody in the future. Um, yeah, he just hasn't been the defensive player, and like the offensive stuff is just kind of meh. He doesn't rebound. He's not a guy who's gonna go get assists. He's not a guy who's gonna go get blocks or steals. Like he's kind of just there to be a spot up threat now, and that's who he's been. He's gonna shoot a lot of threes, and he's gonna convert a lot of threes. He's actually been pretty good from there this season. So he also moves. Cleveland also gets a relatively better like team like friendly situation with the salary. Like LeVert was up to be moved or up to be a free agent, and now Hunter comes in and he is making 21, 23, 24. Not terrible. Not terrible at all. If you're the Cavaliers. So basically just bring in a younger player now. 27 years old. LeVert I think was just a little bit older. And so that's cool. And they add another guy who I think maybe has like, does he have switchability? I don't know. We'll kind of have to like maybe break down some DeAndre Hunter stuff to determine like what is DeAndre Hunter's like defensive outlook look for Cleveland. But he is a shooter that they've added and makes them a little bit more interesting. Let me look at the perimeter defense for Hunter. It says his defense is pretty good on the isolation stuff. Good ball screen navigation, it says. So we'll see. We'll see with Hunter. I think that'll be interesting. And hey, like Cleveland got a good defensive wing, and I think that's kind of what they needed too. Like it just kind of makes sense for them. Like you have Allen, you have Mobley, and so you're gonna keep Allen closer to the rim. You're gonna maybe move Mobley in situations where you can potentially switch him on to guys, and he can potentially guard on the perimeter. And now you have Hunter, who it's like we can throw him on a guy. So let's say a matchup, even we'll just say with Boston, right? Like so your matchups are probably like, Porzingis will probably be guarded by, I guess he could be guarded by either Allen or Mobley because Allen's been great. But with like Porzingis, for example, like Mobley can switch on to him easily, and so same with Allen. And then like I'm trying to think of like what else. Horford can. I mean, is Horford in the game there? Like Tatum. Yeah, I mean, like you can throw him on Jaylen Brown or Tatum, Hunter for sure. Like 6'7", 225. Like that absolutely can be able to be pretty good position for the Cavaliers, and they really haven't had that player before. I'd love to go back and probably watch how they've defended Jaylen and Tatum. So that will be really interesting for Cleveland. So now they kind of have a perimeter defender that they can go throughout there and say, hey, like, go hit your threes, go defend like the second, maybe even sometimes the first best player on a team, depending on the matchup, and you'll be good from there. So I think it's good. I think it's a good trade for Cleveland. The only kind of issue that I would say is that Karras does provide some ball handling ability. A lot of that is just going to be focused in the playoffs with Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell. So Cleveland is able to basically say, yeah, we lost a ball handler, but like we also got a good shooter and defender, and like come playoff time anyway, like the ball's going to be in Donovan Mitchell's hands for the most part, and when it's not in his hands, it's going to be in Garland's hands. So they're cool with that. They do lose Niang, but again, they add some shooting with Hunter, and so Niang goes out. 3 seconds, 2 pick swaps, a tad rich. I think that's the trend from this trade deadline. a tad rich, I think, a little bit for DeAndre Hunter. But, Cleveland makes the move. You always had to kind of keep in mind, is like, was this a guy we were going to get in free agency? No. So to be able to, aggregate some contracts and move them out to get Hunter, like, that's a good move for Cleveland. I approve of it. I give a thumbs up to Cleveland. Who knows what will happen come playoff time, but it is what it is. All right, so that pretty much concludes our trade deadline show. I'm going to do one last one here. I guess there's two because like the Marcus Smart trade is interesting. Um, and we're still getting details on that one. Clippers minute move though. So Clippers make a move. They move out Bogdanovich. They get 3 second rounders. And I think I wouldn't be surprised if those are the same picks they got from Cleveland. But they get 3 second rounders out and Bogdanovich. And they send him over to the Clippers for Terrence Mann and Bones Highland. Best player in the trade is Bogdan. So let's talk about Bogdan for a second. How do I say this? So he's an elite shooter. That's awesome. Cool. We saw like he has some ability to be able to create off the dribble. My thing for Bogdan is like the defense is not. It's okay. Like it's not great. It's not bad. Like the Clippers do get a guy who like technically is averaging, like he's averaged 22 points, per 100 possessions. I think is that what it is? Yeah. I mean 22 points in 100 possessions. Like that's not bad. Um, my issue though becomes with them is like you held out of so many Terrence Mann trades and to kind of realize like, hey, the best thing that we got for trading Terrence Mann, like when we were like kind of against trading him, like in any of these like hypothetical guard trades, like because they were trying to get like I can't remember who they were trying to get, but like maybe was it Kyrie at some point, but like the Clippers have always been trying to get a guard before Harden, and now they elect to hold on to Mann, and what Mann turns into is Bogdanovich. I'm not crazy about that. This season, in limited minutes, he's averaging 10 points, which is down from last year, but he's also playing less minutes. Um, and so he is a guy who's capable of going in 20, which is cool. I think that's pretty solid. Um, I think he, at his size of like 6'5", 6'6", he's a guy who can probably go defend wings on the perimeter. Is he going to be great at it? Probably not like super great, but it's a good pickup for the Clippers. I just am kind of interested that it's like, oh, this is the move that gets Terrence Mann out of LA, and then they also move Bones Highland, who, whatever. Why do the Clippers and the Hawks do this? Well, let's tell you. I think was Bogdan. I mean, I guess we'll find out here in a second. Like Bogdan was like, I think he was going to get paid, or he wanted to get paid. I don't know what the exact contract situation is. It'll pop up here in a second. Um, I'm kind of surprised that the move for Atlanta is that they get Bones Highland and Terrence Mann. Like it just kind of doesn't really fit in with like I don't know. Man's cool. Bones is cool. I feel like maybe you could have gotten more. But I don't know. They clearly weren't crazy about playing Bogdan anymore, so it's like on their mind they're like, oh, he wasn't really part of the rotation anyway, so shipped out. Um, and then Bogdan, so his money is fine, and he's under a team friendly deal too. So he's making 17, then he goes to 16, and then he has a team option. So it's not terrible for the Clippers. Like they get another scorer in a sense, and a scorer who is like kind of rested, right? Like remember he was going off for Serbia, like in the Olympics, and then like um, I don't know, I don't know. So I like it. I think it's cool for the Clippers. Ultimately, it's kind of weird for the Hawks, but it is what it is. A nice move, and he's a dude that will definitely play in the playoffs too. So like he's not as terrible. He's not a terrible defender where it's like, yeah, I don't know. I don't think we'll be able to play him come playoff time. But like he'll play in the playoffs. He'll probably have a good game or two in the playoffs, and we'll see what happens with Bogdan. But it's a good move for and I would definitely say an upgrade from Man. So very interesting there. I still can't really understand why the Hawks did it, but it is what it is. There's another trade with Marcus Smart that there's hasn't become like many information, like there's nothing's come from it. Clippers also get Marjon Beauchamp, which is like kind of cool, I guess, but like at one point he was like really like the man, but he's a good defensive player, pretty rough offensively. Um, okay, so the only thing I'm seeing here with the Marcus Smart deal is that he was traded along with a first round pick for 2 seconds. Man, like Washington is just collecting all the players, man. And they're all coming to die in Washington. That's crazy. Let me quickly like Memphis and Washington. Um, then we'll end the stream. It's been fun for about an hour, almost 2 hours. Yeah. So let's see here. Okay, so the money that they're bringing in for, see, it hasn't even updated on Washington's side. So Memphis Smart, I guess that it was just the extension. Like you don't want to extend Smart. His year that so far this year has not been great. So I'm kind of like maybe it's a fine move. But to get 2 seconds for Marcus Smart, a guy who won Defensive Player of the Year a couple years back, like that's interesting. Smart, I think he still is good defensively, and I don't know, man. That just seems so small. Maybe there's more to it, but like on this initial like part of this, like oh Johnny Davis is going. Oh, everybody hold their horses. Johnny Davis is going to Memphis. Wow. Okay. Nothing big there. So I would assume that Washington probably wants to hold on to Smart. 21 million isn't like a crazy amount. If they can get maybe it picks back, like they could maybe move Smart again. But yeah, kind of interesting. Like Smart has been not great for Memphis this year, and so it makes sense that they would get rid of him. Plus, they have a lot of guys on that roster that can play in a playoff series. Conchar, Edie's been fine. Santi Aldama's been good. Laravia's been solid. Vincent Williams, Gigi Jackson, Jalen Wells has like been a relatively like impressive rookie this year. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. Anyway, that's it for the trade deadline show. Thanks for joining. We'll come up with some breakdown videos here soon. Maybe we'll look at the Fox game and kind of see what happens there. But trade deadline is officially passed. Thanks for joining us. More videos to come, and we'll see you soon. So peace out or whatever.